Good evening, YouTube. Tired Metalhead Weatherman. Hopefully, you guys are doing well this weekend. Got a little bit to talk about here in regards to the severe weather threat that we had picked up on in the weekend forecast. Obviously, with it being a weekend forecast, I wasn't going to cover that because it would just make for an unnecessarily long video. Hope you guys enjoyed that one, by the way. Today, we're just going to hone in specifically on this area right here towards the Gulf Coast and parts of the Southeast. This is slated for Tuesday, January 24th, and into the early morning hours of the 25th. So far, we're at a slight risk. A little questionable as to whether or not we get upgraded or not. As it stands right now, there could be a few issues with the warm sector here in regards to mid-level moisture, etc., and temperatures as well. But this has a proficient enough of a shear profile, and we're going to go over that in a minute, to where the threat still of damaging winds and tornadoes is still very much prevalent. So when we look at the vorticity on this, it's a pretty stout system, especially at the upper levels. Very strong low pressure, very strong trough. Looks like it has a neutral, maybe even a slight negative tilt to it. And then as we roll this forward, as we head into the evening hours, we get storms to start to fire around the Gulf Coast here. There's potential for discrete storms. Like, again, the question really lies within the warm sector and the temperatures in the mid levels of the atmosphere, as well as the moisture. But definitely seems like there's more than enough potential for some lift here. I do see potential for a line of storms to pop up towards the end of the evening on Tuesday and into Wednesday. And then before we know it, the cold front itself will advance its way in. We're using the 18Z Euro, by the way, so we can kind of hone in on this, because we're still over 72 hours out. It's 3 days, 3.5 days pretty much. So this is what we're looking like on vorticity right now. We look at the upper air moisture. That's where or mid-level moisture, that's where we're kind of having some troubles here. So we're going to jump this forward to about 60 hours out, I would say. This is pretty much the evening before. So here's our dry slot, and here's our moist sector here, right? You can see those dew points getting increasingly higher, but over towards this region where the severe sector is, it seems like it's a weird little slot. Like, there's plenty of moisture around where the low is itself, just to the south of where that low is expected to be, and this is heading into the evening hours of Wednesday. We're just kind of struggling here. We're sitting at about 60 and 70 degree dew points, and this really small nose of moisture that pops up here. Normally, I'd prefer to use the dew points, but we can't see in the mid-levels with pivotal weather at this time. So it's a little bit of a struggle. Surface dew points actually don't seem to be as big of a problem, actually. It's really weird how this is set up as of right now. Like, if you see, here we are on the evening before, we have dew points in the 30s. You want almost double of this to see good potential for severe weather. And it really doesn't, it's almost like the moisture is coming in almost a little too late. It's like a little small nose that pops up around Louisiana here, where we're in the 60s right now. So this is making this a much harder forecast, because with this lack of moisture, storms may not even fire. So it's going to be 50-50 with this one. We're going to have to see how this changes throughout the next couple of days, because it's likely to do so, but I don't know. This one's a little tricky. When we look at, so we're going to also take a look at the temperatures at the surface, and then we'll also compare them at the mid-levels around here. So we're going to jump to 60 hours. See, look at the temperatures out ahead of where the storm system's supposed to be in the early morning hours. We're sitting at 30 to 40 degrees. Once we get to the afternoon hours, we're still sitting at about 50, 55 degrees. And this doesn't really get set up until later into the evening. So it's, like I said, it's a bit of a question mark as to what to expect here. There could be some storms that fire, there could be none at all, or it could be an absolute chaos. I don't really think, I'm kind of leaning away from the latter, so to speak. I'm thinking it's going to be pretty tame, pretty limited from this one. I would not expect a tornado outbreak at this time. These perimeter change, that's a different story. So we're going to look at the temperatures, and then we're going to look at the reason why we're concerned about this having severe weather. We're going to start out by looking at the mid-level or the mid-latitude temperatures. That's going to be a key factor behind a lot of what's going to happen next. So here we are looking at Monday night to Tuesday, and mid-latitude doesn't seem that impressive either. It's not super abrupt cooling. You want more cooling, and it just doesn't seem like it's there. Like you at the mid levels, you want the temperature to be a little bit more close to 0 degrees Celsius or right about freezing. And we're not getting that. If anything, this kind of has almost like the look like there's a little bit of a cap here. So it warms up more towards the low-level jet region, and as we get towards the mid-levels, it cools back down, but it's very It's not very rapid. It's a little bit more on the progressive side. You would look for more abrupt cooling. This is very gradual. Definitely not what you would be looking for, and as a result, you can see audiograph's not looking impressive. Neither does the SQT in general. So I don't know. It's a bit of a toss-up here. I think there could be some storms that fire late around this region, but severe potential looks, as of right now, like it's going to be pretty limited. Now, when we look at the mid-level jet, that's where things start to get a bit more impressive. I'm going to see if I can get this to 60 hours out. There we go. So here we are. This is the night before. And look at this wind maximum that pops up here. Very strong. We're sitting at about 65, 70, even 70, almost 80 knots, actually. Above 80 knots. Wow. Very strong sector of wind shear at the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And it's even stronger at the high levels. In fact, I saw an observation earlier ahead of this system where there could be a jet stream at the high levels where we could see about 90 to 110 knots. And this definitely looks to be the case. The color variation is a little bit different because at the high levels the winds are naturally stronger, but still having a high level jet about 500 millibars or 30,000 feet at 100 knots, it's still very impressive. So, I mean, the wind shear is there, but the other parameters seem to be lacking pretty intensely, I would say, at that. So, like I said, going to be a big question mark. If these storms can fire, they still will have potential, but like I said, I wouldn't expect this big severe outbreak at this time. Like I said, we're still 4 days out, close to 3 days, so parameters can easily change. Even the low-level jet with this still looks pretty solid. I mean, we're still looking at an area where we could get up to about 70 knots, 80 knots. Wow, even at the low-level jet. Wow, that's crazy. But if these storms can take advantage of this environment, it could still be a very big problem. And really would only take one storm to be a memorable day. So hopefully things stay pretty tame, but we're still, and it seems like it could, but we'll still have to watch this really closely. So another reason why we have to keep an eye on this is the lack of CAPE with this. This is a big reason why there's a huge question mark with this. This is not going to yield a lot. This is not going to be a high yielding CAPE event. So, and that's the biggest thing with this. Like if you look at this here, all the rich CAPE values right now, they're offshore. Do I think that there could be some that sneak onshore, some higher CAPE values? Most likely, yes. Do I think it'll be in abundance with what we're seeing in the Gulf? No. I think it's going to be maybe a sub-1,000 joule CAPE event. Maybe a couple areas might get above 1,000, but for the most part, I think we're working with a bunch of spitwads if you're looking for severe weather, so to speak. So again, going to be a pretty tough forecast here. This is going to have to be one that's watched very closely and updated very closely. So last but not least, of course, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the precip here. We could still probably get a decent idea of what the storm mode could be if there ends up being severe weather. But for the most part, I think it's going to be a big mess. And lo and behold, there it is as we head into the evening hours. Here's our low right here. And then here's our storms forming pretty much on the cold front. With the lack of daytime heating and really just not a lot of dynamics to work with other than wind shear, it's going to be tough to get severe storms. But I think right around this region, I'm mostly concerned about southern Alabama or southeastern Alabama for maybe some potential for damaging winds, maybe a tornado or two. But as this progresses east, I think the dynamics become even less favorable. Temperatures don't even get above 50s and don't get past 50 in some of these regions over here. So again, I'm not really sold on there being any severe threat after that point. It just seems like it's a little too stable. But that's pretty much all I got for this video here. If you enjoyed anything I did on here, of course, definitely drop me a like. Always appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, definitely do so. And of course, share the video to anyone that may need it, especially in the areas of interest, because that's going to be a big story. I think in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about the wintry side with this system, simply because I think that's going to become the more dominant story in this setup here. This definitely yields itself to being more of a wintry setup. It's not dynamic enough to be a severe event at this time. We'll see how this progresses and how it changes. But that's it for this video. You guys take care. This has been Tyler, your Metalhead Weatherman. Have a good night.